How France and Prussia shaped America, the game of nations. Let me start by explaining the first foundational principle, the idea of universality. Universality is a profound philosophical concept that asks you to imagine something quite radical. Whatever action you take, whatever choice you make, everyone else around you will automatically do the exact same thing. Think about the implications of this carefully. If you decide to go drink alcohol, then suddenly everyone around you is going to drink alcohol as well. Do you want to live in a society filled entirely with alcoholics? Probably not. If you cheat on a test, then everyone else will immediately cheat as well. Do you want to live surrounded by cheaters, where dishonesty becomes the universal standard? Of course not. But here's the positive side. If you choose to read books and educate yourself, then everyone else is also going to read books and pursue knowledge. So imagine that whatever you do will be instantly replicated by everyone else around you, becoming the universal standard of behavior. That's the fundamental idea of universality. It forces you to consider the broader consequences of your individual choices. The second principle is the concept of free will. I know perfectly well that eating ice cream is unhealthy for me. I understand that eating protein, consuming chicken, is much better for my health and well-being, but here's the crucial point. I cannot be forced to eat chicken, even though it would be objectively better for me. I have to choose to eat chicken by myself, of my own free will. If I want to eat ice cream instead, I can make that choice. It might not be the wisest choice, but it's mine to make. We cannot coerce people into doing what they don't want to do, even if it would be beneficial for them. This respect for individual autonomy is absolutely fundamental. The third principle is that humanity is an end unto itself. The idea here is profound. You cannot use a human being as merely a tool or instrument to achieve some supposedly higher purpose, because humans themselves represent the ultimate purpose. Human dignity and human life are the highest values. Let me give you a concrete example. I can't act as a king and declare, you know what? I'm going to wage war to generate tremendous wealth for my kingdom. I'll sacrifice 50% of my people in this war, but the other 50% who survive will live in paradise, enjoying unimaginable prosperity. You absolutely cannot do that. Why? Because you cannot sacrifice anyone's life to achieve some supposedly higher end. Because the ultimate end, the highest value, is human life itself. Every individual human life has infinite worth and cannot be treated as expendable. These three principles together form what's called the categorical imperative, and this philosophical framework becomes the theoretical foundation for something called the general will. The general will and the birth of modern France. Now, in practical terms, how do you actually implement these abstract philosophical ideas in real society? Well, the general will give rise to legitimate government, and then that government creates laws that reflect and protect the general will. The legitimacy of any government derives from the consensus of the people, which is expressed through the general will. But understand this carefully. The general will is not the same thing as simple democracy or majority rule. The general will is an abstract, elevated idea that represents the best of who we can collectively be, our highest moral potential. Just because everyone votes for something doesn't make it legitimate under the concept of general will. For example, imagine everyone votes and says, okay, we should all collectively kill that person over there because we don't like him. No, that's absolutely not the general will in action. The general will recognizes that everyone is fundamentally important and has inherent worth. It embodies the principle, do unto others as you would want others to do unto you. You can't kill anyone simply because a majority wants to. If people vote for something that violates fundamental human dignity, then the government that implements it is illegitimate because it goes against the true general will. This concept is critically important for understanding the French Revolution. During the French Revolution, the entire European continent united against France. Britain, Prussia, Austria, Russia, every major power got together and attacked France simultaneously. At that moment in history, France was poor, economically struggling. France had just overthrown its monarchy and was in political chaos. By all conventional measures, France should have been easily defeated. But France defeated everyone. How was this possible? Because the people were energized to fight for their nation in a completely new way. They genuinely believed, I am now part of something greater than myself. I have equity in this nation. I have a stake in this project. Therefore, I will defend this nation with my very life. For the longest time, France was essentially unbeatable on the battlefield because of this revolutionary energy and commitment. That is the French conception of what a nation truly is. A nation is fundamentally a social contract that guarantees rights to its citizens, and in return, those citizens must be willing to sacrifice their lives for the nation. That's why the French Revolution was so remarkably successful, which ultimately led to the creation of the French Empire under Napoleon. Does that make sense? This is one model of what a nation can be. The Prussian alternative, iron and blood, but there's another completely different conception of the nation state. And this comes from the Prussians or the Germans. This is the idea of iron and blood, famously articulated by Otto von Bismarck. In this conception, a nation is not something you consciously choose to join. It's not something you enter into through a rational social contract. A nation is in your blood. A nation is your language, your heritage, your ancestral land. These are things you're born into, things that define you whether you choose them or not. And you prove that you are worthy of your nation by sacrificing yourself in battle, by demonstrating your absolute commitment through blood sacrifice. This idea comes to us most clearly from German nationalism in the year 1870. In the Franco-Prussian War between Prussia and France, these two radically different concepts of the nation-state came into direct violent conflict. On one side, you had France with its model of the nation as social contract. You fight for us because you have agreed to be a citizen of this nation, which in return guarantees you certain fundamental rights. This is a rational exchange, a mutual commitment. Prussia represented the opposite view. No, you fight because it is your sacred duty to fight. It's in your blood. It's in your language. It's woven into your culture. It runs through your family lineage. You fight because of who you fundamentally are, not because of any abstract agreement. When these two cultures, these two philosophies of nationhood clashed on the battlefield, it was the Prussians who emerged victorious. That victory led directly to the creation of modern Germany. In 1870, the current nation of Germany was founded by the Prussians when they decisively defeated France in the Franco-Prussian War. This was a watershed moment in European history, demonstrating that blood and heritage could prove stronger than enlightened ideals and rational social contracts, at least in that particular conflict. America's revolutionary model, the nation as game. Now let's turn to America, because America developed yet another distinct conception of what a nation state could be. At this time in history, we're talking about the late 1700s. America was actually a very small place, just 13 colonies clinging to the Atlantic coast. The vast continental interior was controlled by indigenous peoples. The French had significant territorial claims. The Spanish controlled enormous regions. But the Americans were extraordinarily ambitious, and they were expanding with remarkable speed. Britain, the mother country, actually became deeply afraid of American growth and potential. By the 1700s, America had more people than many expected. It was becoming wealthier. It was actively welcoming immigrants from all around Europe, creating a dynamic, growing society. Britain saw this explosive growth and felt threatened. So Britain tried to limit American expansion. They tried to impose restrictions, essentially saying, you cannot cross beyond this certain line, the Appalachian Mountains. You must stay contained in your coastal colonies. And America's response was essentially, screw you, we're going to revolt. This fundamental conflict over expansion and autonomy created the American Revolution. In 1789, after winning independence, America created the Constitution, which became the highest law in the land, supreme over any temporary government or leader. At this point in history, America's founding fathers looked around the world carefully. They understood the British system of monarchy and parliamentary government. They knew about the French system and its revolutionary ideas. They were trying to grow their country as rapidly as possible. They had to simultaneously fight the Spanish, the French, the British, and the indigenous peoples who occupied the lands they wanted to settle. They were desperately trying to welcome as many immigrants as possible to populate their vast territories. So they made a radical decision. The nation would become a game, not a sacred blood heritage like Prussia, not a social contract like France, a game. In this game, the citizen is fundamentally a player, and that player is trying to maximize his personal wealth. Through this process of each individual trying to get as much wealth as possible for himself, he will become energetic and ambitious. He will work extraordinarily hard. And this individual energy, this personal ambition, will contribute to the overall wealth of the entire nation, allowing America to grow very, very fast. That was the plan. That was the revolutionary American model. The three pillars of the American game for this system to actually work, they had to construct a game with three absolutely essential characteristics. The first characteristic is openness. The game has to be completely open, meaning anyone can come and play. Anyone can participate. But achieving true openness requires something difficult. You have to limit the importance of history and ethnicity in your society. You can't have a nation based on bloodlines and ancient heritage if you want to welcome everyone. So America created a revolutionary concept, the idea of the melting pot. We welcome anyone who comes to America regardless of your race, regardless of your history, regardless of your current wealth or poverty, as long as you're willing to assimilate into American society to become part of the melting pot and adopt American values. That's the first crucial idea, radical openness. The second characteristic is fairness. The game must be fundamentally fair for people to commit to playing it seriously. The third characteristic is clarity. The rules must be crystal clear. People are willing to play a game and work extraordinarily hard to win that game if several conditions are met. First, they must actually be allowed to play the game. They can't be arbitrarily excluded or discriminated against. Second, the rules must be really clear and transparent. You need to understand exactly what the rules are and how success is measured. In America, the rules were deliberately made very simple and straightforward. You come to America, you follow the law, you work really hard, you get rich. That's it. Really simple. It's called the American dream. The third essential element is that the game must be genuinely fair. This means the only criterion for generating wealth should be how hard you work, how much natural talent you possess, and how much merit you demonstrate. The idea of meritocracy is absolutely central to the American model. And look, this is actually true in practice. When you go to America, you will discover this reality. If you work really hard, if you're genuinely talented, if you're truly smart and demonstrate ability, Americans will respect that. They will reward merit. I've traveled to many countries around the world, and I can tell you from direct personal experience that America genuinely operates this way. But it's not true everywhere else. It's not even true in Canada, where I actually grew up. In Canada, people don't really care if you're ambitious. They don't particularly care if you're smart or if you work hard. They expect you to follow established rules and conform to existing norms. That's the Canadian way. Stability, conformity, don't rock the boat. You go to China, we all know what China is like. No one cares if you work hard. No one cares if you're smart. Merit means almost nothing. What matters is your guangxi, your personal connections, your family background, who you know, what networks you're part of. That's what determines success. But actually, this is true for most of the world. The genuine appreciation of merit exists in very few places. I would argue that the idea of meritocracy is truly functional in only two places globally. America is the most obvious and powerful example. I've been in meetings where initially Americans look at me and think, this guy is Chinese. He probably doesn't speak English very well. He's probably not that smart or sophisticated. There's definitely initial discrimination and stereotyping happening. But the moment I speak, the moment I begin to make my case and present my arguments, they are won over by my logic, by my arguments, by my creativity and ideas, and they welcome me into the club. They respect demonstrated ability. That's the distinctive American attitude, being genuinely open-minded, being intellectually generous, appraising and rewarding talent, above everything else, including ethnic background or initial prejudices. The British and the English are somewhat similar in this respect. They might have initial racist assumptions, but if you can construct a genuinely good argument and present it compellingly in front of them, they will accept your argument on its merits. They'll change their minds based on the quality of your reasoning. But guess what? Nowhere else in the world is this really true. In China, you can have the best argument in the entire world, the most logical and compelling case imaginable. No one cares. It simply doesn't matter if you don't have the right connections. So look, there are certainly many serious issues and problems with America. I'm not claiming America is perfect by any means, but in all honesty, America is genuinely a place that appreciates merit and truly rewards demonstrated merit. That's precisely why everyone around the world wants to go to America. It's not just propaganda. It's based on a real difference in how society operates. Constructing the game, the constitutional framework, the question then becomes, how did America actually create and maintain the system? How did they build this game and make it work? They accomplish it through the Constitution. The fundamental idea behind the Constitution is to create a game, a system of rules and procedures, and make this game more powerful than any individual ruler or temporary government. The game itself must be above power, must constrain power. How did they achieve this? By creating a system of government where different branches check and balance each other, preventing any single person or faction from accumulating too much power. You have the president as the executive, you have Congress as the legislature, and you have the Supreme Court as the judiciary. These three branches are deliberately designed to constrain each other. The Supreme Court's role is straightforward: to interpret the Constitution, which is the highest law in the land. The Constitution sits above everyone, even above the government itself. The powers of government are divided roughly equally among these different branches, creating a deliberate tension and balance. Congress can create laws and control spending. They hold what's called the purse, the power to allocate money. The president has war powers and executive authority, essentially the sword, the power to act and enforce. But here's the crucial check. If the president wants to declare war, he needs Congress to approve it, because Congress has to appropriate the money to actually fight the war. The president can't just unilaterally start major military conflicts without congressional support and funding. This system of checks and balances ensures that power remains divided and that the rules of the game established in the Constitution remain supreme over any individual or faction. This is how America transformed the nation state into a game that could accommodate unlimited players from unlimited backgrounds, all competing within a clear framework of rules that applied equally to everyone. This was revolutionary. Not a nation based on blood and soil like Prussia. Not a nation based on Enlightenment social contract like revolutionary France. But a nation based on a game, clear rules, open participation, and rewards for merit. This American model would prove extraordinarily successful at generating wealth, attracting talent, and expanding power across an entire continent. The game of nations took many forms: French universalism, Prussian blood nationalism, and American meritocratic competition. Each shaped the modern world in profound ways. And understanding these different models helps us understand why different nations behave the way they do, why they attract the loyalties they do, and how they structure the relationship between individual and state. This is the hidden architecture of the modern world, built by France, Prussia, and America, each offering a different answer to the fundamental question: what is a nation, and why should anyone be willing to die for it?